Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have another great show for you today as we continue dealing with the very cold weather and the giant frozen blocks of ice that are everywhere. But my anger on social media yesterday did inspire action from no less an authority than Mayor Muriel Bowser herself.
Oh, really? She saw your exact X remark and got to work.
I'm taking full credit that they started plowing with renewed vigor and the roads are somewhat improved.
And you know what? D.C. schools are actually open today. My friend who's an administrator, that was you.
My doing. So if you're a kid who thought you were getting your fourth snow day in a row, blame this guy. Stay in school, kids.
Coming up on Rising, we'll get into the Democrats' three main immigration enforcement demands to avoid a government shutdown.
Plus, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro slammed the Biden administration for what the governor said was failing to connect people to high-speed affordable internet.
And rapper Nicki Minaj appeared with President Trump on stage and said she might be his, quote, biggest fan. But I'm Robbie's biggest fan. Let's start there. What's on your radar?
Let's get to it. Well, why are so many left-wingers still denying that Charlie Kirk was killed by someone on their team? It's been months, and I thought this vicious lie had been debunked numerous times, but here we go again. Tiffany Cross is a progressive pundit and podcast host. She previously had a show on MSNBC, and now she makes occasional appearances on CNN. This week, she joined the panel for Abby Phillips' show alongside legal analyst Eli Honig, a moderate and also TV personality, Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank, who's a libertarian-ish leaning conservative, moderate conservative. It did not go well. Right off the bat, Tiffany Cross repeated the provably false claim that Charlie Kirk was murdered by a right-wing extremist, and then she conjured up this lie during a discussion of the recent attack on Representative Ilhan Omar, who was assaulted by a deranged man who squirted an unknown liquid substance at her while she was speaking. Honig condemned this act of political violence, as everyone should. I condemn it as well. But then he made the very fair observation that there's plenty of extremism on both sides. He went out of his way to assert that he did not necessarily think there were exactly equal amounts on both sides, only that conservative figures faced violence too, like Trump, like Kirk. But when he mentioned Kirk, Cross interrupted him to say that Kirk had been killed by a right-wing person. Take a look.
I take your point, and I accept the data. I'm not saying it's exactly 50-50 equal, but let's also not forget Charlie Kirk was murdered. The president...
Not by a left-wing extremist. That person espoused very right-wing extremists.
Look, if you look at the targets, if you look at people in office, there's...
The right attacks the right.
People on, but there's Josh Shapiro, there's Melissa Horton, now there's Ilhan Omar on this side, there's Donald Trump on this side, there's Charlie Kirk on this side.
But you're saying that, but those
I'm not saying it's exactly
people.
mathematically equal.
But it's not even analogous.
Take your data.
It's not even analogous.
The rhetoric on both sides.
The fact that there was an assassination attempt on the
It's not disingenuous. That is BS. And even the attacks that you're referencing, Ellie, those were right-wing people. Like, give me the example.
So what she just said is a lie. Now, this notion that Tyler Robinson, Kirk's alleged killer, had right-wing motivations has apparently, I guess, remained appealing for some leftists. I had no idea. Ever since the progressive Substack writer Heather Cox Richardson helped to mainstream this idea in the immediate aftermath of the shocking murder. Nevertheless, it is absolutely false. While Robinson did indeed come from a Republican family, his own motivation for committing the assassination was that he specifically disliked the things Kirk had said about transgender people. We know this because Robinson confessed to it in his message to his romantic partner, who was a transgender individual. He wrote that he felt compelled to take action to stop Kirk from spreading hate against the transgender community. This is not really open to debate. Robinson is not a right-wing extremist, and his stated reasons for murdering Kirk were characteristic of left-wing thinking. Now, perhaps you can forgive a commentator for giving that wrong if it's before all the facts come in, but at this point, months after Kirk's death, Cross is just repeating something that is completely debunked. And then, for good measure, she also argued with O'Leary about whether new recruits who have joined Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, are members of the Proud Boys, a far-right militia group. Cross asserted that she knew, for a fact, that Proud Boys had joined ICE, and she cited as evidence the presence of what she described as white supremacist tattoos on the necks of some ICE officers. Take a look at this.
Furthermore, there's a reason why we have not seen a resurgence of the Proud Boys. And that is because I believe a lot of them are likely made ICE officers. Again, I've said this on the show before, I've not seen any deep dive reporting into who these people are, but they certainly adopt a lot of the ideology, a lot of the tactics, a lot of the violent tactics, a lot of the wearing masks.
When challenged by O'Leary, and to her credit, Abby Phillip, Cross doubled down.
Tiffany, you're saying that you're just making a supposition here. There's no concrete evidence.
You got to be careful. That's way
there was some supports.
These are men and women serving the government.
We have seen white supremacist tattoos
risking their lives, serving the government.
Risking their lives, they're taking lives.
You're calling them Proud Boy militia. Did you say that?
Well, I did not call them Proud Boy militia, but I think it's disgraceful that you're sitting here. I'm actually not. But I think that there are white supremacist tattoos on their
white supremacist federal officers.
Yeah, white supremacist federal officers.
Like, where?
Now, there may be former Proud Boys who are members of law enforcement. There might even be members of law enforcement who do have white nationalist tattoos. It's true, I looked it up, that one ICE agent attracted some attention for having a Norse tattoo that some people claim is a far-right signifier. I would caution about reading too much into this in general, however, because tattoos mean different things to different people. In fact, for 20 years, Graham Plantner, a Democratic candidate for Senate in Maine, had a tattoo that was plausibly associated with Nazi iconography on his chest. He claims he didn't know that's a Totenkopf and what that means. But Tiffany Cross suggested there were so many Proud Boys joining ICE, it was having an effect on the former group's organizing capabilities. She said there's a reason why we've not seen a resurgence of the Proud Boys, and that is because I believe a lot of them are likely made ICE officers. That's not the reason we've seen less from the Proud Boys. We've seen less from the Proud Boys because they were sued, and many of them were put in jail following January 6th. Enrique Tarrio, the former chairman of the Proud Boys, was in prison for 2 years after being convicted of having organized the January 6th riot at the Capitol. Tarrio was also revealed to have been an FBI informant, by the way, in 2012 and 2014. So in that sense, yeah, there have been Proud Boys working for the federal government, but I actually don't think that's what Tiffany Cross meant.
Oh, and so much here. I know we don't have too much time, but I think...
Come get your girl.
Well, I'm not on the show to defend Tiffany Cross. I don't know her.
Well, it's not. There's no way to defend her.
I don't
have Charlie Kirk remark.
On the Charlie Kirk remark, that could be incorrect. I can speak to the broader... I said that's incorrect. Yeah. We can speak to the broader argument. I guess let's start with the fact that she brought up that there's not a balance, and this is what Eli agreed with, that doesn't have to be 50-50 split on the political violence. And you know that a couple weeks or days after Charlie Kirk was killed, that the DOJ removed a really important study from its website that said 85% of political deaths have been from right-wing extremists. And so when the president and his administration take up data that's been studied since 1990, actually, they noted that 227 events that took more than 520 lives were right-wing events, and 42 that took 78 lives.
The big asterisk that doesn't include 9/11. Which
would be what? That would be considered.
Which would be Muslim terror. It wouldn't be right.
But that's what I mean. So why would we include that? I understand that.
So if we just count,
this
is why this exercise is silly overall, in my view.
But you have to acknowledge. Wait, let me finish, because there's another layer to this that she's speaking to, calling like the police and ICE and whoever she's referring to as Proud Boys. Obviously, we don't have information about that or facts to prove that. Abby Phillips rightfully asked, what is the data? She said before she started, what's the data? But when you make a broad claim, people will pull it without taking that first part and saying, look, I don't have any deep research into this. Maybe you should pause on saying it. But I will say that when you look at people that are rising within the MAGA coalition, like Nick Fuentes, and people say, I separate certain ideas from this extremely racist man, and he's somebody who's been held up as sort of the future or part of the leader or part of the party, well, you have to consider that there are racist people that are being compelled to listen to this guy. And then when you see the deaths at like supermarkets or mass shootings when they're churches in Charleston, when they're killing people of color specifically because they have white supremacist ideals, well, you can understand how this is all correlated. And if the right wing is embracing somebody like Nick Fuentes and then people are killing people because of white supremacy ideals, well, what party do you connect that to? And so that's our broader point.
I mean, he advocates racism. He doesn't advocate violence, and I don't think anyone has cited him as an influence who's...
But if the thought is that people of color, whether they're migrants, any people of color are taking certain areas and too much of the U.S., and it's supposed to be this white normalized place, and so by their presence, they're taking things from you, people want to retaliate. So maybe Nick Fuentes is not arguing violence, and I'm not connecting him and saying that he caused any of the deaths or the shootings. I'm saying if white supremacy is an accepted idea within a certain part of MAGA, that follows that man.
Well, I'm not
then
calling
it's
for white
natural
supremacy to be an accepted idea. White supremacy.
Yeah, no, a lot of people
nonsense.
are arguing that within MAGA right now. They're arguing whether we should embrace this or move forward, because even people that have spoken out, they've been like, look, we can't let the party acknowledge or accept these people. Do we even include them in our coalition? There's been multiple conversations about that. I think that's why the Turning Points Convention was mostly about the beefs within it, because of the fact that Nick Fuentes is brought in the party by people like Tucker Carlson.
I said the beefs
that
are over
embracing
foreign policy, not really much, not so much over the. I mean, Nick Fuentes, his profile rose among young online right-wing people, primarily, mostly in spite of his racial views. It's about foreign policy. It's about having a different foreign policy.
So nothing has to do with being anti-Semitic or racist. I think that's a huge problem for a lot.
I mean,
of
I think
people.
there's too much anti-Semitism. I've complained about it.
My point. So that's what I'm saying. When you propel people like that, and then there's violence around religion or race, well, Tiffany Cross is just crossing that line and
But
showing
she's pretending, she's delegitimizing and saying that it's all, I mean, that's what she said. It's all right-wing violence.
And I said I'm not here to defend her whole entire statement. I'm just trying to make sense of what I heard. And that's what I got from it.
And I don't like the idea that you can tell the tattoos thing gets overinterpreted in both directions. I said this when we talked about Graham Plantner, that,
You did.
I don't know, man, he was drunk in a bar in wherever it was, Denmark, Norway, I can't remember. All right, the new video of Alex Pretti clashing with immigration enforcement just 11 days before he was fatally shot. We will discuss that. Stay tuned.
New video this morning of what appears to be Alex Pretti, the man shot and killed by Customs and Border Protection agents on Saturday, clashing with federal immigration officers just 11 days before he was fatally shot.
Take a look at this video from January 13th that was obtained by the News Movement. Now you can see the man identified by the BBC as Pretti in the brown jacket there, and what he's doing is screaming at a car full of agents. He then actually goes ahead and kicks the car to the point that he knocks out the taillight there, and then the agents do come out, they swarm him, they pin him to the ground. We can see that there appears to be a handgun in his waistband. It's similar to the gun that was seen in the footage from the actual encounter that led to his death. Now, it's unclear if Pretti was detained following that incident or charged with anything. The DHS says they are aware of the video and are analyzing it.
A lawyer from the Pretti family confirmed to CBS News that the man in the footage was Pretti and told CBS, quote, nothing that happened a full week before could possibly have justified Alex's killing at the hands of ICE on January 24th. As of this morning, at least 2 agents involved in that fatal shooting have been put on administrative leave. The new video comes as tensions in Minnesota continue to escalate. Yesterday, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey met with border czar Tom Homan, writing on X, quote, I shared with Mr. Homan the serious negative impacts Operation Metro Surge has had on Minneapolis and surrounding communities, as well as the strain it's put on our local police officers. I also made it clear that Minneapolis does not and will not enforce federal immigration laws, and that we will remain focused on keeping our neighbors and streets safe. City leaders will continue to stay in conversation with Mr. Homan and his team. And Homan even echoed Frey's call for community safety and communication during a press conference this morning. Let's take a listen.
In my meetings with folks so far, and most important, the governor and the AG, the Mayor Frey, we didn't agree on everything. One thing we did agree on, though, everybody I talked to agreed on, was that community safety is paramount. One thing we all agreed on was U.S. Immigration Customs Enforcement is a legitimate law enforcement agency that has a duty to enforce the laws enacted by Congress. That said, I'm not here because the federal government has carried this mission out perfectly.
But despite that, President Trump seemed surprised at Frey's refusal to work with federal immigration enforcement. And he rattled off this warning moments later on Truth Social. Surprisingly, Mayor Jacob Frey just stated that Minneapolis does not and will not enforce federal immigration laws. This is after having had a very good conversation with him. Could somebody in his inner sanctum please explain that this statement is a very serious violation of the law and that he is playing with fire? Frey responded, the job of our police is to keep people safe, not enforce Fed immigration laws. I want them preventing homicides, not hunting down a working dad who contributes to Minneapolis and is from Ecuador. It's similar to the policy your guy Rudy had in New York City. Everyone should feel safe calling 911. That didn't sit well with the vice president, J.D. Vance, who jumped in with his 2 cents. How about federal law enforcement? Should they feel safe calling 911? Right now they don't, because you've told your police officers not to help them.
As you read this, didn't you, I mean, not didn't you, but I would say as somebody at home who lives in Minneapolis right now, watching my leaders or leadership on X doing this is trash. People really want some answers and want a proper investigation. They supposedly sent Homan in there. Fry is being childish by immediately rebuking him on X. The president is being childish by jumping in when you try to send in the mediator to calm the situation down. The president is also speaking out of both sides of his mouth by also saying we want to abide by laws, but then they don't want to abide by their own gun laws that are in place protecting the fact that Pretti is allowed to hold a gun without being killed. He's going around saying, well, I wouldn't bring a gun to a protest when he's being interviewed. He has to abide by the laws of this country also, but he's calling Fry out. I think that everybody should calm down, and that's exactly what Homan said this morning. That's what you said. I mean,
I appreciate
calm down
what Homan said very much.
And I just don't understand
why. He said, we'll look at it, and not everything's been done perfectly, but we're going to conduct targeted operations. I think that's a very satisfying statement. Now, we should address this new video because this was a lot of subject of conversation yesterday into the evening as it came out. I don't think anybody should be kicking a police vehicle, knocking out the lights. That's maybe that feels good to you in the moment. That is not effective political change. It's violation of law. It's property destruction. I've kicked my washing machine in blind fury a couple times. All I do is hurt my foot. I'm not accomplishing anything. So he could have been charged in relation. I mean, the tackling of him, and if he was detained or charged as a result of that, would have been totally proper. Now, the issue is, because I see a lot of people who are, critical of him going, aha, this is our smoking gun, this changes everything. Well, okay, but that incident took place a week before. It doesn't affect the calculation for whether in the incident where he died, they were authorized to use deadly force, maybe in some very extreme scenario where if they had happened to recognize or remember him from that one, nor does it, again, Kristi Noem said what she said about him before she knew any of this.
Right.
So,
because they said yesterday they didn't. It
doesn't really change anything about the conduct of law enforcement or whether it was a justified shooting or not, or whether we need an investigation, or whether it was right or wrong to prejudge the situation. It does. I do think there was already a rush, as there always in the mainstream media, to canonize him and say, oh, he was the most perfect, sweetest, wonderfulest person who's ever lived. No, you saw him in anger kick out the lights of a police vehicle, and
I think that that's just the problem with our society, is that sometimes when people die and we try to justify it, we feel like we need to make them a saint to say that their life was worth living.
Like they did with George Floyd.
He can go to, George Floyd can get arrested, go to jail for doing anything illegal. He doesn't need to be killed. So that's the point, that we took it too far. And so just because you had a prior clash with police officers or law enforcement does not mean that you deserve to die in a moment where you might have another clash.
No, but nor does it mean you deserve sainthood.
Yeah, and I never agree with sainthood, because I think that falsifies that people deserve to live just because they do, as opposed to because they're a saint they deserve to live. No, we have laws because people should go to jail when they commit crimes.
Right.
And so that always has been my issue with ordaining people that just were killed for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, and it's another good reminder to just, before you spout off on social media, when you've seen a clip, you know what's going on, you know the context, just wait. You'll never be wrong to just wait.
Up next, President Trump renewed his threats against Iran, saying time is running out. Don't go anywhere. President Trump on Wednesday renewed his threats against Iran. Trump, in a Truth Social post, ordered Iran to enter nuclear talks or face potential attack by a, quote, armada of U.S. warships.
Trump writes, hopefully Iran will quickly come to the table and negotiate a fair and equitable deal. No nuclear weapons, one that is good for all parties. Time is running out. It's truly of the essence, as I told Iran once before. Make a deal. They didn't, and then there was Operation Midnight Hammer, a major destruction of Iran. The next attack will be far worse. Don't make that happen.
Now, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that Iran's regime is probably the weakest it has ever been, and has, as the U.S. moves warships into the region.
The German Chancellor sided with Trump, saying, quote, a regime that can only hold onto power through sheer violence and terror against its own population, its days are numbered.
The Iranian mission to the United Nations responded to Trump's demands, writing on X, quote, Iran stands ready for dialogue based on mutual respect and interests, but if pushed, it will defend itself and respond like never before.
Meanwhile, Iran's neighbors and its allies, the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, reiterated that their airspace, territory, and waters will not be permitted for use if military action against Iran does take place. Gregory Brew, an analyst and expert on Iran with the Eurasia Group, told The Hill this is an effort by regional states to manage their relationship with Tehran while also remaining on good terms with the United States by essentially signaling in both directions that we're not taking a side in this.
I think this is a bit of like coercive diplomacy. I mean, we can obviously see what's going on here. He's trying to talk big to Iran to get them to behave. I think when you look at what's happening in Iran, there's a natural humanitarian crisis that we'd like to address. But when people
them, you mean humanitarian crisis? It's of the regime.
Yeah, the regime,
dissidents.
They're like,
crisis.
I mean, the people are dying there because the regime is terrible. But Trump is falling short of saying that he wants to change the regime the same way he is in Venezuela. So the idea that he's going there to solve this crisis is kind of falls on deaf ears to me because I don't know what the actual intentions are unless you peel back the layers and see that we initiated the 12-day war with Iran because of our ties to Israel and we're protecting Israel. And so if that's the case, just say that. And people are like, okay, are we really trying to save the day in the Middle East and do regime change and have them have democratic elections? Or are we just supporting our ally? Like, what is it? And what are the motives? And then is that actually the thing on the agenda? Or does Trump want these hawkish war type people that are in the party to go to the polls in November? People just are trying to see transparently what's going on here with the America First guy doing everything internationally. I know you argue he can do two things at once, but people want to know why here, why now, when there's been chaos in the Middle East often. Like, it's not the first time Iran has been in this state. This is the worst version of it, but it's been in the state multiple years in the past.
Yeah, I mean, the difference is now there was mass protesting and there's a desire among the people for a different regime and they're begging the U.S. to intervene and they want something done, as was the case with Venezuela. This is very different from our previous interventions, which were imposed on a not willing population with Iraq and Libya. Syria maybe was a mixed case. These are people crying out for the U.S. to liberate them from awful authoritarian religious tyrants in the case of Iran, communist tyrants in the case of Venezuela. And I think it's a tough call on what should be done. Now, what should be done is a conversation in the halls of Congress, because I say this every single time, I do not believe the president should have the unilateral authority to make these decisions by himself. Not this specific president, but any president. And so we would have these things discussed and debated, and we would weigh the pros and cons of more intervention. And then if the American people disagreed, they could punish their leaders by voting them out of office if they don't like what they did, in the same way that Hillary Clinton was haunted by her vote to authorize the Iraq War because that ended up being unpopular among many people. That's how it's supposed to work. That's why George W. Bush, whatever you might think of him or the decision he made, was right to go to Congress and get that authority.
But we're not actually making a plan. So, in Venezuela, there's like, we left the same leadership in, an ally to Maduro. So every time people ask Trump a question, are you planning on changing leadership over there and holding fair elections, he really says that's not on the immediate agenda. So I assume it's not on the immediate agenda in Iran either. Democratic leaders are working towards a deal to avoid yet another government shutdown. I'm going to break down their list of priorities in my lens. Stick around.
Welcome back to Rising. Lindsey, you're up. What's in your lens today?
Let's get into it. So Democrats have been getting hammered with the same question for months. Where's your plan? Well, now they're putting it on paper. And it's really not some abstract academic wish list. It's 3 very specific demands tied to Homeland Security funding, coming as the clock ticks towards a shutdown deadline after federal agents shot and killed Alex Pretti in Minneapolis last weekend. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says his caucus is united around 3 main objectives. And when you listen to what they are, the bigger point is simple. Immigration enforcement can exist, but it can't operate like a system with no rules, no transparency, and no accountability.
First, we want to end roving patrols. We need to tighten the rules governing the use of warrants and require ICE's coordination with state and local law enforcement. Second, we want to enforce accountability. There needs to be a uniform code of conduct and accountability. Federal agents should be held to the same use of force policies that apply to state and local law enforcement and be held accountable when they violate these rules, including we need independent investigations to help enforce accountability.
I think that's common sense because roving patrols without clear rules don't just create fear. They create mistakes, as we've seen in Minneapolis. They create confrontations, and they create the kind of murky, confusing encounters where nobody knows who's in charge, what authority is being used, or what rights people actually have in certain moments. And that's where the second point matters, a universal code of conduct and independent investigations. If local police departments can be required to follow use of force policies, federal agents shouldn't get a special carve-out. Accountability isn't anti-law enforcement. It's what makes law enforcement legitimate. Then there's the third demand, and honestly, this one shouldn't even be controversial.
We want masks off, body cameras on. Federal agents must be prohibited from wearing masks. They must be required to use body cameras, and they also always have to carry proper identification.
Masks off, body cameras on, proper identification. That's really not about politics. It's about basic transparency. Body cameras have been used across the country because they protect the public and they protect officers when accusations fly. And if someone is exercising government power, stopping you, detaining you, entering your home, you should be able to see their face and know who they are. And the public is clearly uneasy with how far things are going right now. A Reuters Ipsos poll just came out, found that some 58% of respondents said ICE agents have gone, quote, too far in their crackdown. It's not a fringe opinion, that's the majority. So when people say Democrats don't have a plan, here it is. Guardrails, accountability, and transparency. Because enforcing immigration law should never mean abandoning the standards that make this country a democracy in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, I, for the most part, agree with those policies. I saw Rand Paul say similar things on TV yesterday, say that, like, look, what happens with local law enforcement, if there's an officer-involved shooting, even if it is ruled perfectly justified, you know, usually they have a period where they're on desk duty and there's an investigation. Right. And that can be obnoxious for them, but it's just kind of the standard operating procedures. So national law enforcement it shouldn't be any different. And yeah, I totally agree with him. He said there should be an investigation.
So if we get to Friday and the government shuts down and the Democrats have laid out specific things they'd like, if we are not in agreement about that, we know it's because the other side of the aisle said we're not going for this.
Well, some of those things aren't even controversial. Don't we all agree that we want body cameras? I don't think anyone is saying I want less video footage of these encounters. I don't think anyone thinks that. Now we're arguing about what the video footage shows, but we're glad we have it.
And if we had body camera,
everybody's glad they have it.
Right. If we had body camera every single time, then this would really
Some of these aren't body. Right. With the video,
some of them aren't body cameras.
Some of it is from spectators.
We'd know almost like we have matched that with the spectators, and they would have even more of a firm case about any argument.
Always have body camera footage.
And I think that the impartial, independent investigations, they should include both federal and local law enforcement. I mean, I don't think that's a crazy thing. People say they can't believe the federal government right now. People say that Fry and Waltz are adding to the chaos and they can't listen to them right now. Okay,
well, they are.
So then let an independent entity jump in, and then both people can be involved, and they independently can tell us what happened. I think that that's a fair thing. And also the masks off. Like, why are we hiding ICE agents in the way that we're not hiding police officers? Like, you can do your job and take your mask off. I mean, in no place.
Well, the reason for that, from the conservative perspective, is that local police doing their jobs is not particularly controversial. The work ICE is doing is controversial, and that if their identities were known, they would be doxxed, harassed. They would be, screaming liberals, some of whom I guess are being trained to actually have clashes with law enforcement. Alex Pretti, now we know, did kick out the taillight of a police vehicle.
It doesn't give ICE the right to kill him.
People, not saying it does. Absolutely does not. But you'd have people like that showing up at ICE officers' homes and maybe, smashing their mailboxes with baseball bats or, throwing bricks through their windows or something like that. That's what you'd have if they were not masked. That's the argument. I'm not saying I agree with it, but that's the argument.
I accept the argument. I just think we need to hear very vocally, not just Rand Paul, who always, tries to play the middle or be neutral. We need to hear more Republicans.
Well, he wouldn't say it's playing the middle. He would say it's applying his limited government view
doing what government is asked to do, right?
Yeah.
Negotiate across the aisle. We need to hear more Republicans come to the table and say, well, if it's not these three things, what are your three things? I don't want silence and then another shutdown and then a blame game. Like we see what's happening with the president and Fry, who can't get it together. When Holman and Walsh seem like they have it together, we're going to try to figure out the next steps. Fry and the president are still arguing like children. We don't want the government to shut down and then see people arguing on X. That is not acceptable, once again, 1 month after the last shutdown just ended.
Soon enough, Trump will be negotiating, I guess, with Amy Klobuchar, who has decided to run for governor after all.
And I think that's a good move for her.
Yeah, I guess it's a good move for her. I guess you wield, because I was wondering, like, why would she want to do that job? But I guess you get to do actual things, whereas in the Senate, in the minority, you just, I don't know, you just go on TV.
The spotlight is on...
Although I thought maybe she was in line for a higher-up leadership role in the Senate eventually.
We know that she wanted to be president. That didn't really work out, but her ambitions have always been to be on a national stage.
Vice president, maybe.
Maybe, and her ambitions have always been on a national stage. And so I think the fact that Minnesota and Minneapolis is in the spotlight in the way that it is, she has an opportunity to say the same way, and we're going to talk about Josh Shapiro in a little bit, I can distance myself from the last person in this position, but I can also lead it a different way. And she can be that perhaps moderate Democratic voice that's also saying, yeah, fraud's not acceptable. Anybody who commits it should be arrested. And no perspective
I don't know
about
that she's that moderate, but
I think that you have to acknowledge how much fraud happened in the state. You can't dismiss it just because you don't like the YouTube journalist that went there. Whether you believe him or not, there's other accounts that have been fully proven of the fraud. And so I think she needs to address these things and also hopefully get in the conversation now about what immigration enforcement looks like in her state. That's this is a big job to take on it while the spotlight is on Minnesota, but I think that she can do it. I think that she has a level head.
I don't know about any of that, but I find her less grating and obnoxious than I find Tim Walz. So
you cannot find Tim Walz any more obnoxious than you find our president. You can't. That's not possible. No, that's impossible. If you talk about levels of obnoxious, it's just
I have Tim Walz derangement syndrome. Guilty as charged.
You must.
I cannot stand him. Yeah, nice. It's actually that's a rebuttal to anyone out there who thinks I've been accused of this, that I always dislike the female political people more than males. I've been accused of this. Here's a clear case where I prefer Amy Klobuchar to Tim Walz.
You're not allowed to say anything about any women candidates. You're not allowed to say.
I'm not allowed to say anything.
You're not allowed to say anything.
Yes. I'll stay in the kitchen. Next up, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro is criticizing what he feels was a lack of action from the Biden administration. Very interesting soundbite. We'll watch that next. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro criticized the Biden administration for what he described as a failure to connect people to high-speed, affordable internet. The governor was referring to the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program, which received $42 billion in funding back during Biden's first year as president.
But the slow implementation of the program was the cause of a great deal of frustration for Shapiro. He says it was just one example of President Biden being unable to follow through on his plans.
I think historically, if I'm being candid, the Biden-Harris administration didn't provide those specific, tangible things that people could see or feel. I'll give you a very specific, concrete example. One of the biggest things holding back our rural communities is a lack of high-speed, affordable internet. Some people call that broadband. I've got 246,000 homes and businesses without it.
And there's more from the governor.
I was incredibly proud of President Biden when they got that infrastructure bill passed to provide the billions of dollars that were needed to plug everybody in, connect everybody in Pennsylvania. And do you know how many people, Scott, this many years later, have been connected to high-speed, affordable internet thanks to President Biden's law in Pennsylvania? Zero. Because the dollars were never driven out.
Shapiro, of course, was on the short list of candidates to become Kamala Harris' running mate once Joe Biden gave up his bid for re-election in 2024. Now, the governor is currently promoting his new book, published on Tuesday, which goes into greater detail on why he felt it wasn't a good idea for him to be Kamala's VP.
There was some controversy between the two when Shapiro wrote that Harris's team had asked him if he was ever an agent of the Israeli government. Shapiro also made an appearance on The View earlier this week and explained why he thought it was important for him to talk about that moment.
I wanted to make sure that I was being forthright with people about what I went through, how I processed these decisions. As I said a moment ago, getting the chance to speak about this for the first time in what is otherwise a process that's pretty closed. And to me, this wasn't about dishing respectfully. It was just more about how we went through the process, what I thought, what I felt coming out of it. And I hope the story there shows that I'm someone who's driven to serve, and to serve in a way that still allows me to be a good dad, a good husband, and have an impact on people's lives.
This all comes as speculation grows that Shapiro could run for president himself in 2028. But for now, the governor says he's only focused on this year's midterms elections.
So I wanted to talk about this because I thought that conversation he had with Scott Galloway, who we discussed yesterday, and Jessica Tarlov, was really revealing. So this is a infrastructure thing that Democrats wanted and voted for, to spend a lot of money to get internet access into rural communities. And they spent all this money. This money was approved. This is something Democrats wanted to do. And they didn't do it, even though the money was appropriated, because there's too much red tape, too much hoops to jump through. It's actually difficult. This is the same story with money approved to build charging stations for electric vehicles all over the country. They built 0 charging stations. This is something Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson talk a lot about in their new book, The Abundance Agenda, because we have lost the ability for government to do things. Government,
they discuss things.
Makes, even it's not, and usually when you say that, it's like they can't agree on anything, there's too much gridlock. No. That was not the problem. Congress was not the problem here. They voted to do this. The problem was implementation. The problem is, to build anything, you have to get a permit, and you have to do an environmental impact report, and you have to work with the right laborers, or get union problems, or you have to buy the right goods, or they're going to get tariffed, or you have to do, there's just too many stops and checks in the process. We could never build, the Hoover Dam went up in the equivalent of 50 seconds compared to the pace at which we do things now. The Empire State Building, the highway system, all these amazing accomplishments that were partly due to government planning and funding would be impossible now because there's too much bureaucracy and regulation, and that is something that vexes me and is vexing to Josh Shapiro. It's one of the reasons that people don't trust Democrats to be in charge at the federal level, because states where they actually do manage to build it, look at California, approved money for high-speed rail, what was it, 30 years ago now? However many years ago, they haven't built it. They spent the money, they haven't built it. Whereas red states are building new housing, more apartments, more single-family, all that stuff. They're doing it more effectively because they have less environmental regulation, less labor regulation, etc. People are moving to red states because there's more housing. And Democrats nationally need to have a better answer to that. Democrats are more willing to spend money than Republicans, or spend government money, or approve government funding, approve a project, but they can't do anything with it because there's too many veto points on their process for building things. I think it's a huge problem. I'm glad Josh Shapiro is talking about it. I'm glad he's willing to cast aspersions on the Biden administration for their lack of follow-through. That was something that's very frustrating to people, even including people who are Democrats.
I can't argue with you.
Yeah.
The fact that he said 0, I was like, wow, because I remember how the conversation even blew up past where it is at the moment that they probably received the funds. It was because during the pandemic, a lot of kids, you saw the disparity with lack of access to, you providing this access in certain communities. It's like, if you have no service on your phone, can't even use your mom's signal from her phone to get on the laptop you may or may not have. You can't even, you can drive to the library if you don't have a car. There were a lot of disparities that we saw specifically with young kids and access to broadband. So the fact that it never was implemented is tragic. And I understand that Shapiro also has a book coming out that he wants to be a New York Times bestseller. He also has the book coming out on the heels of saying that he's likely going to run for president, given every single action that he's doing. So we know that part of that is, listen, I am not, what did Kamala fail at, or people critique her of, is that she went on The View on that same program and wouldn't separate herself from Biden. A noble decision, because it's an awkward position to be in, to be self-righteous in that moment when your partner, that was a partner for years as vice president and president, is not only probably publicly embarrassed from that debate, but also receiving the brunt of should have stepped out or you shouldn't be there. There was a lot of contention in that moment. I think she probably would do it differently. And she said that if she can go back again, maybe just pointed out the differences. So Josh Shapiro is very clearly, and he has been pointing out the differences, even by saying that it was his choice to not be her running mate as opposed to her choice, like why I chose not to. he's making himself look strong in this moment, completely different and like an alternative. Because the biggest argument that people are going to have and that President Trump seems to rely on is the failures of the Biden administration. And this is exactly, he's like, I can point out a failure and tell you why I chose not to join his second person when she was going to become the first and I'd be her second, because I didn't like the way that they led and some of the things they were doing. And so I think part of this is like saying that he's like almost like this independent guy, because you even said, I like Josh Shapiro. I mean, not like him, but you're like, he's fine. And that's,
I don't like him.
You don't like him, but fine is like a big statement coming from you. It's not like, oh my gosh, I love, it's like, he's fine. And if, let's say most people that were in the middle that were trying to decide, like all those Nikki Haley supporters, the people that just went for Trump because they like his policies and thought maybe his personality is not the best, those people are still going to vote again. Mm-hmm. And so they have to find somewhere to go. And if there's that same fatigue that there was during when Trump lost the 2020 election, a lot of people were fatigued about the antics. And if we go back into that, Trump's not running again, but they can automatically tie those antics to J.D. Vance or whomever is in his sphere that ends up as the candidate.
Whenever any Democrat talks about government doing something inefficiently and wants to focus on a way to do it more efficiently or get the government out of the way so that the private sector can do it or whatever, that kind of... he first attracted my attention when he came to office and he abolished the requirement that to work for the government in the state, you no longer needed to have a college degree. You could still have a college degree if it was relevant to the position, but it was no longer a on-the-book requirement. I'm like, that's great. Getting rid of needless credentialism, jumping through hoops, that's what I want. And if more Democrats could embrace that, I think it would be a good thing for the party. I think it would make them more popular and more competitive, and that's all to the good.
Well, I don't know, because we're going to talk about Mamdani in a little bit, but there's two different things going on that are totally different. There's the Mamdani approach, which Democrats will not embrace, and then there's the Josh Shapiro approach. So not that those are the only two. We know there's a lot of different approaches within MAGA or the Republican Party, but that's a big, stark difference between what they're both doing. Up next, rapper Nicki Minaj says she's probably Trump's #1 fan. We'll be right back after this. Rapper Nicki Minaj is calling herself President Trump's #1 fan.
Minaj attended an event in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday to promote Trump's pilot program that would deposit $1,000 into savings accounts of children born between January 1st, 2025 and December 31st, 2028. Let's take a look.
I will say that I am probably the president's #1 fan. And that's not going to change. And the hate or what people have to say, it does not affect me at all. It actually motivates me to support him more. And it's gonna motivate all of us to support him more. We're not going to let them get away with bullying him and, the smear campaigns. It's not going to work, okay? He has a lot of force behind him, and God is protecting him.
I did not see this clip yesterday.
You didn't? The New York Post reported that Minaj is contributing between $150,000 and $300,000 of her own money to these Trump accounts.
Minaj said in an X post last week, the true meaning of paying it forward, early financial literacy, and financial support for our children will give them a major head start in life, and in some cases, they'll end up teaching their very own parents how to invest and what to invest in.
In 2020, Minaj said she wouldn't, quote, jump on the Donald Trump bandwagon in recent years. However, she's become a vocal supporter of the president. Meanwhile, The Daily Show roasted President Trump and Minaj after their viral hand-holding moment. Let's take a look.
Mr. President, don't let those nails get near your delicate hand. Seriously, look at this. Oh, one slip and Trump's hand is going to start leaking like a busted waterbed. It's like a chainsaw holding hands with a Ziploc bag of chili. Things could get real messy real quick.
It's not funny in the least bit.
I think that the memes on Instagram were funnier. Like the fact, why were they holding hands? Why is that necessary? Like to hold hands? Now they're best friends.
I think that's beautiful.
You don't. You laughed the whole way through. You laughed the whole way through. As she said, his #1 fan. She's being an antagonist. She posts the Chucky meme on X every single day about how she's acting like Chucky. She got a gold citizenship card from the president, which is those really expensive, I think, $1 million cards. I believe Trinidad and Tobago. And she came over as a migrant and never had her full citizenship. And even though she's married, one would think that maybe she's a citizen because her husband's American. But now she has this card to triple check that she has her citizenship. And it just looks like pay for play a little bit. She's putting money into these accounts.
The accounts
that's a beautiful way to contribute.
Donald Trump and I support high-skilled immigrants. She's one of them. She's doing great things for our country. She's a talented musical artist. As I was telling you before the cameras were rolling, I enjoy her very much.
You were telling me that.
Big fan. She's Donald Trump's #1 fan, but I'm her biggest fan. So wasn't that what I was saying?
That was exactly what you were saying. Yes, as you mixed her up with some other people. Listen, I can separate the art from the artist. I'll take your line from yesterday.
Yeah.
Nicki Minaj is being a little bit strange right now based on past behavior, and I don't really understand. But I guess if you look at the gold card that she's receiving and maybe some other benefits that might come down the line, she's doing whatever it does. I saw a meme that says, if I send you the hand-holding meme of Nikki and Trump, just know desperate times came to desperate measures. That's what it feels like. It's like she has a lot of issues going on, and I don't even want to go into detail. You can just go online and see the different issues that she has going on with her husband and her brother. So I just don't know. I don't get it. But also, people are allowed to support whatever political candidate they want. Just the whole hand-holding, the extra outfits, coming down to D.C.
Trump's diverse appeal to so many different communities is just, you love to see it.
But you know what? People were calling for her, speaking about diverse appeal to different communities. Like I said, she's from Trinidad, and also the Venezuela ship that Trump ordered to be blown up in the Caribbean Sea had a mom from Trinidad asking what happened to her child because she said that he was not a criminal. And so as somebody who's connected to that country, you would think that would be something you'd also ask the president about, as this mom grieves the loss of her son that she says was not a drug dealer.
So she says.
That's a mom just saying a thing, and so the president says, as Congress
has a mom.
Yeah, and the moms defend your honor. What do you mean?
Yeah, that.
And so we should just take Trump's word for it. That's what
we
you're saying.
Can't just take mom's word for it.
Yeah, but also the entire Congress multiple people were asking, what is Trump's word based on in this situation?
I'm happy to learn more, but it's not, I mean, come on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, a grieving mother. I'm going to at least listen to her thoughts.
Right. Well,
she lost a kid.
People on death row have grieving mothers too. That doesn't mean anything.
No, where's your heart, Robby? Where's your heart? What are you doing?
I have a heart. It's 2 sizes too small or something during the holidays. But you know what? It grows bigger when I am moved by these beautiful demonstrations of support for minority-owned business, women-type things, giving back to the community. It's great. Trump and Nicki Minaj. Terrific. That does it for us today on Rising Live, however, and we got to get out of here, so look out for more YouTube content coming your way later today. Have a good week. Just 4 weeks into his term, New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani is sounding the alarm about the city's budget.
He says New York is facing a projected $10 billion budget deficit and emphasizes the seriousness of this deficit like this.
We are speaking about a fiscal crisis at the scale greater than the Great Recession. And so there will not be one single thing that can answer that crisis. It will require us to pursue every single avenue. That means looking inward into savings and efficiencies. That also means raising taxes on the wealthiest New Yorkers and the most profitable corporations. And it means recalibrating the relationship with the state.
You heard Mayor Mamdani hint there to his proposed solution to this Great Recession scale crisis. He says he plans to raise taxes on wealthy residents in the city, but he also says he wants lawmakers at the state level to increase the amount of funding it gives to the city. Take a listen.
We are looking for what New York City is owed. And what we have found in almost the entire duration that former Governor Cuomo was at the helm in Albany was the shifting of that relationship into one that is stunning in its imbalance. And so there are a number of specific things that then Governor Cuomo did in shifting those burdens. There are sadly too many examples to be able to cite with you today, but it does leave us with many options for how we can bring this back to what is deserved.
As for raising taxes, a major concern is that doing so will drive out the wealthy who would be taxed under his proposal, something CNBC's Squawk Box pressed him on.
If you lose a couple of those people, is that in your mind okay? Is that a cost of doing business? Or is that a problem? And what do you do about that?
Well, I think I have to prove that this increased revenue leads to an increased quality of life. And frankly, we also have to get through the kind of fear-mongering that typically takes place in this. The other day, I was speaking to a New Yorker who self-identified themselves as someone who would be taxed by our proposals. They said, I'm going to leave, like you're saying. I said, I don't think you will. They said, why? I said, because it's a 2% increase. We're talking about $20,000 on an income of $1 million. They said, that's actually much less than I thought it would be. I wouldn't actually be making a financial decision on the basis of that kind of an increase.
Despite the $10 billion hole, Mamdani says he plans to present a balanced preliminary budget, but didn't say whether that budget would include his signature proposals like free buses and government-subsidized grocery stores. Oh,
Two things that you're obsessed with, the grocery stores and the buses. Can we focus on one thing? I like that he's holding the landlords to account. I like that the math.
That most of all.
I like that the math isn't crazy.
Can
I profoundly say what I gotta say?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
2%, like he gave an example. It's a 2% increase. It's really irrelevant to a millionaire. It's $20,000. Not saying that money's irrelevant.
I'll just say 2% of your income if you.
Well, I need a couple more dollars to get to $1 million a year, but I'm hoping to get there soon. Listen, the most ultra high earners are not leaving New York because New York is the best.
We'll see.
As somebody who's from there, LA is totally different. And I say that as somebody who's weary, right? I understand Hollywood and the industry, and I've watched it Netflix build in New Mexico. I've watched Tyler Perry have one of the most popular studios now to be rented from in Atlanta.
Yeah, you don't have to live in
And
LA,
so now it's
New York
kind of like,
anymore.
oh man, I don't know. LA was always like Hollywood, and now movies are more and more shooting internationally or other places in the US. So New York could turn into like the place where people don't want to be, but come on, it's the city where dreams come true, never sleeps. Like it really, I'm from New York. I mean, I'm not gonna, and no, you're a hater. That's sheer hatred. Come on, guys. You guys know New York. Everybody internationally is like, I want to go to New York. I want to come to New York. It's like a dream come true to
then you get there,
get off the train and see all the things.
It's like I think that dream is dying.
Well, I'll say, and
there's a lot nicer places.
New York is extremely and unusually dependent on high earners. So the top 1% to 5% already pay a disproportionate tax rate. And as I continue to pursue my American dream, I hope to be in that top 1% to 5%. And I would not like to be having Mamdani in there talking about, oh, we need more money. They already disproportionately pay like this key, like thousands of taxpayers pay like the most in extreme amounts already because New York disproportionately affects them. So I don't think people are going to leave.
5% of earnings, my dear.
Maybe I hold myself to a higher standard.
It's like not the 1%, but like the 3 to 5%. We very
you
well.
You don't know what I make, Robby. You don't know what I make.
It's in the ballpark. It's similar, I think.
Listen, I think at the very least, when I'm trying to defend Mamdani here, it could buy time. As they come up with some concrete plans for the future, as they think about how they could prevent emergency services in the city getting cut. If this is extreme urgency that he's speaking to and saying that this deficit is wild and saying that maybe other parts, from what I gathered, he's trying to say that other parts of New York that aren't as concentrated as Manhattan are getting allocated funds like in the same amount that Manhattan's getting. And that's because of Cuomo is doing. If he wants to undo some of that to bring money in, it's not all just tax the rich. So I would think you'd be happy to hear about more of these policies.
No, I was. And I would love to hear more about that. I don't hold Andrew Cuomo in very high regard, so I'm not. I was not pushing back on that. I don't know enough to say. Now, I also...
And he didn't list anything.
Just because I don't like Andrew Cuomo doesn't mean that's a fair attack on him. Right. I have no idea what the situation is. If he somehow hollowed out payments that should be made in New York City or things that should be provided in New York City by the state, that's a bad thing. I don't know whether he did that or not. I don't automatically believe or disbelieve Zoran that that's the case, but that seems like something to work on. I'm glad he didn't say that we're going to fix this solely by taxing the wealthy, because that would be... But now his plan there was very specific. We're going to tax the wealthy this much more. On everything else, it's, we're going to recalibrate. We're going to look at things. It's kind of vague. That plan's very concrete. He thinks people won't leave. I don't know. Maybe he's right. California, though, is doing a more serious experiment, raising the taxes by much more, promising to raise them, and it is generating turnover. People are fleeing. We are watching it happen. The highest incomers are leaving the state. Now, that tax that some people in California are trying to impose is much more insane than Zoran's increase, so Zoran's increase might not have the same effect. But, I would be worried about this as a political leader in an era increasingly where remote work is a thing, where you can live and work in different places. We're more globally integrated. The network effects of being in a place like LA or Silicon Valley or New York are, I think, still, they're not nothing, certainly. I mean, I live
as
in,
like people
we-
want to.
I would rather
be
live
amongst
the
people.
No,
that
it's
you
not
do
nothing. I'm
business
not saying
with.
it's nothing, but it is certainly less important than it was before. Particularly in these very high income the tech industries, where you're coordinating, you're working with engineering teams that are halfway around the world. So, or people still living in their mother's basements in just some random place in the country.
I'm still thinking about you saying "mom knows best" or whatever about a mom complaining about her child being wrongfully killed by the government.
Oh, let's not go back to that.
I don't want to go back to I'm just saying like the mom knows best thing. Yeah. Okay, fine. I want to hear more about his plan. I don't like that he was vague about what exactly Cuomo did and what funds were being allocated. He's like, oh, too many.
Frankly, it sounded like kicking a man while he's down.
Yeah, I'll take them.
fine.
Name all 20 of them. People would like to hear where are they going, because maybe the people don't want them to be rerouted to New York City if they're going somewhere that they really care about. So list them out at least on the website so we can comb through it. And I think this is somebody who's following through with the actions they said they would do. So again, we have to give Mamdani more than 4 weeks, as you mentioned in the intro, that he's been in office, and let his plan play out. He's been elected. Let's see how his plan works out, and then we can criticize down the line when things have a chance to.
The plan for landlords was to give them a financial incentive to never fix anything.
No, that's not you got to be a good person, Robby. You got to fix the faucet if somebody's paying you to live in your space. You can't just let them be for dead without a faucet.
Well, you got to fix the faucet, but
you can't be a slumlord.
Upgrading to the infrastructure that they're only going to do if they can charge more for the unit.
Robby, he has instances, he said, like over 1,000 of complaints from an owner, a business that has multiple buildings in New York that's not doing the right thing by the people that live there and the residents and the tenants. And so if that's the case, if there's one company that's claiming bankruptcy while at the same time dismissing the concerns of people that have been paying and lining your pocket for years, you got to make that right before you...
get tenants who would be willing to pay more in exchange for better service and a nicer building.
You got to fix the economy for people to be willing to pay more.
Well,
we can't. No one has any extra money to pay more.
Well, then you got to go somewhere where you can afford to live. I mean, sorry.
America's not that affordable right now, Robby.
No, New York's not that affordable. America's plenty affordable. There are plenty of...
So somebody should just get up and move. Get out of New York.
People act like that's such an affront to our ancestors all moved.
It costs money to move. It costs money to move.
Go west, young man. Like, head out. That's what people move with their feet to more affordable areas where there's more economic opportunity. That's what everybody did for hundreds and hundreds of years, and now New Yorkers are acting like that's some affront to their dignity. Well, I don't see it that way.
Okay, well, I disagree because New York is the stock exchange. New York is the fashion capital. New York is one of the entertainment capitals. It just has everything there for you, and so people really do a lot of business there. International countries spend their days working off of a schedule that's East Coast timing. Sometimes they have scheduled emails or meetings based on East Coast timing. I think it's a real important place in a different way.
I didn't say leave the East Coast. I said leave New York.
Okay.
I can't deal with any time zone other than Eastern time. I don't know what time it is anywhere else.
All right.
D.C. Come to D.C. It's great. Although not right now because we're frozen in a giant block of ice. Next up, Jeremy Boring, co-founder of the Daily Wire. He's speaking out what he thinks are the key differences between various right-wing figures, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, etc. Haven't heard from him in a while since his exit from the Daily Wire. Very interesting. We'll be right back.
Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens have both caused their share of controversy over the past year in online right-wing circles. Now, Owens has been blasted for pushing conspiracy theories about Charlie Kirk's death, while Carlson has faced heat for interviewing far-right influencer Nick Fuentes.
Jeremy Boring, who's co-founder and the former CEO of the Daily Wire with Ben Shapiro, he believes the two are actually very different in terms of their goals. He accuses Owens of only trying to boost her own status by pandering to her audience's belief. Let's watch.
On two separate occasions, what do you actually believe? And on both occasions, she told me, I believe what the people believe. I am the voice of the people. Now, never mind that that's a completely amoral statement. Never mind that I don't know who the people are in this conversation. Never mind that the people, whoever they are, can obviously be wrong. Candace is actually saying something somewhat profound. She's saying, I will say whatever gets the most reward. She may not even know that that's what she's saying, but she's articulating audience capture as a virtue.
By contrast, Boring says Tucker Carlson is part of a small cohort of people, including Marjorie Taylor Greene and Steve Bannon, who do have real political goals.
These are people engaged in an actual political project. These are people who are engaged in trying to create a new American majority premised on left-wing economic populism and right-wing social populism. But some of the sort of superficial qualities look the same, but I don't think it actually is the same. Candace is not engaged in a political project. Tucker Carlson is very much engaged in a political project.
Now, in the meantime, Owens is once again stirring up controversy after leaking an audio clip of a woman alleged to be Erica Kirk speaking on a Turning Point USA conference call. Owens says she found Erica's tone during the call to be, quote, extraordinarily upbeat, considering it allegedly took place less than 2 weeks after her husband was killed.
Owens also took issue with Erica Kirk allegedly discussing the amount of merchandise sales TPUSA had completed since Charlie's death. She took to X earlier this week, writing, I'm still stuck on, this is Candace Owens, I'm still stuck on the fact that Turning Point raised $250 million over a few months and felt zero shame attacking YouTubers for making thousands of dollars discussing the flaws of the investigation. The shamelessness of that PR strategy is absolutely wild to reflect on. Let's start here. Candace. We know how I feel. This is yet another example. So this leaked audio of Erica Kirk
I listened to
being very excited about how much money they had taken in, how much influence they were having, how many people were watching, listening to, involved with Turning Point. And there's a short time after Charlie Kirk's death, and people are implying that this shows that she's not really sad or that she's not being affected. I think this is absolute BS. I think this is nonsense. People grieve in all sorts of different ways. She is clearly, and I don't know her, so this is what I'm gathering from how she reacts to all this. I think she has chosen to try to find something good to come out of Charlie, her husband, dying in such a horrific public way, and that is his life's legacy, the organization he started, to try to build that into the even larger, more successful, more influential thing. So she is taking pride in what they are accomplishing and how many people they're reaching, and that is part of the way she is memorializing and recognizing her dead husband, rather than just saying, this is so sad and I'll never get over how sad this is. She is trying to to have something positive come out of it. I think that is completely relatable, completely understandable. I think not everyone, but a lot of people would act in a similar way and have in a similar way in the past, and it's fine. And to try to read that or interpret that as some kind of indictment of her or what was going on in their relationship is projection and wrong and actually evil.
Serious note, Amber and I talked about grief and talked about how there's many ways to handle it. So in Erica Kirk's perspective, it might look like she's putting her face down into work and just like getting things done and just trying to rally. And then sometimes people like that a year later will find themselves, or in moments of silence, just sobbing to themselves. And that's perfectly normal. Then
she doesn't want to be on camera for that.
Then there's another point of grief that like Candace Owens could be doing, which is just you fabricate every single story you can come up with.
Go insane.
Because, no, for real, because you try to make sense of somebody dying. Like you're saying, oh, he was what did she say? He was teleported here for a little while, or he's from another time. Time travel. So like it starts to be a little crazy. And Amber and I both have seen these things happen with different people that we've both lost at a young age. And so that to me is a serious point. But on Instagram, there is a funny point that Candace Owens, we just came to the conclusion, she just loves Charlie Kirk. She wanted that to be her man, and this is why are you going this hard? Like, nobody's understanding, so maybe she's like going on and on because she can't fathom. She talks about how good of friends they were and how they kind of lost touch. Like, this sounds like somebody that you wanted to be something with, and it didn't go exactly where you wanted it to go, and then he ended up with a different wife, and now it's a quarrel because she didn't love him in the way that you thought he needed to be loved. You're smiling too much, you're not, and that's why you should have been with me. That's what I'm getting. That's the vibes that I'm getting and the Instagram world is getting. Sounds a little crazy, but I was like, wow, that otherwise, I mean, she went this hard on Bridget Macron. She might just be bored, but it seems to me like she actually deeply cares about this man.
I have no idea what she really thinks or really cares, and I certainly would not make that insinuation without more information. I think it's what Jeremy Boring said, to get back to the earlier part, is that she is completely audience captured. Audience capture is a real phenomenon. That is the danger that independent content creators, people who participate in the alternate media ecosystem, of which we are a part, although we're a little different because we do work for a large mainstream company, content creator commentators, pundits, personalities who are associated with a network, with an organization, face pressures of their own. A lot of people imagine they face sponsorship pressure or advertising pressure. In my experience, this has not really been a thing, but it can be a thing in other contexts. So there, you face editorial constraints. You get a new boss who buys the whole company, as people are seeing with the Ellisons and whatever, that the editorial line changes. So those people face constraints. But people who are totally off on their own, they face the constraint of, you learn, because of the very precise analytics of all these platforms, you learn exactly what the people watching you want to hear, and you feel pressured to reward them over and over and over again with exactly what they want to hear. And if you lean into a audience that is more interested in fringe ideas, you want to give them fringe ideas. And I'm neither saying that's good nor bad, because sometimes fringe ideas have validity. I don't think the fringe ideas about Charlie Kirk's death have any legitimacy at all, but she's leaned into it because she has an audience that expects that. And that's what he's articulating, versus someone like Tucker Carlson, who might seem to be platforming fringe ideas, but they're fringe ideas that he actually agrees with and is interested in advancing, whereas she is just, which is why she can go from Brigitte Macron to Charlie Kirk to whatever, why she has not been, she was at one point she didn't even have right-wing ideas at the first place.
I agree with most of what you said, except for the fact that Tucker Carlson is not doing the exact same thing. I mean, to go and interview...
I don't think he's doing the exact same thing.
I do. I think to go and interview Vladimir Putin, understanding that you're doing the softball interview to build up your channel, is something that is self-serving and audience-serving. And also, he didn't do a hard interview. It wasn't like he was journalistic trying to get to the bottom of the Ukraine war. Like, he believed everything Putin said.
Well,
I mean, to interview Nick Fuentes...
What I'm saying.
I know, but I just think part of it is also trying to build your audience, right? You know that interview was going to blow it out the park. Every major news network was like, oh my gosh, he's sitting down with Putin. What's he going to do? He got mocked by the people that he wanted to be mocked by and has an issue with. He got celebrated by the people that thought it was a righteous thing to do. He did exactly what he was trying to do, build his platform at that point. Because he was trying to say, I'm a major player that can set up an interview like this independently. And so he's doing things that are also trying to get the audience that he had from Fox to stick with him and the new people to stick with him.
Well, yes, but he's charting them. He wants his audience to evolve. I mean, much of his audience is on board with him, but he is interested in altering the direction of the Republican Party, of conservative thought, more toward non-interventionism, toward less hawkishness toward Russia, less. He wants to take it, frankly, in a much less anti-Islamic direction. He's meeting with Islamic leaders. He wants to take it in a more anti-Israel direction. Like, that's his political project, which and Jeremy Boring, I agree with in this interview, was trying to distinguish that a little bit from what Candace Owens is doing, even though it has some surface similarities. But I don't know about any of the earlier things you just said, but maybe we'll get more information on that in a later date.
Look, it's just Instagram tea. Don't take it too seriously. We have a lot more to talk about on Rising. Stay with us.